you've been doing some mentoring and some strategic development work with some of our clients, particularly in the creative sector. Bit of a torrid time for those involved with events and culture and gatherings at the moment. What have you heard, or what have you learned from that, and what have people been saying are their kind of priorities at the moment?
I think from sort of working specifically with Atom clients, what I've learned is that there's quite a strong feeling of survival and wanting to sort of put the right work in place to strengthen the company. So what I've really felt is survival working with Atom clients, and not just seeing the pandemic and the lockdowns as a sort of reason to quit what they're doing and give up, but actually to use this time to kind of take a step back, look inwardly at their organizations, and then see how they can strengthen what they're doing and develop what they're doing, and also adapt and change. And I think obviously even going forward with the potential vaccines and the return hopefully in 2021 to some sort of kind of previous normal, I think that the companies are actually seeing this as an opportunity to adapt and grow and change, and to put new sort of working mechanisms in place. So survival, continuation, strengthening and adaptation, I think, are kind of some of the key areas that have really come out of the strategy work that we've done and kind of the mentoring that I've been doing with those clients.
But that's hard though, isn't it? I mean, when people don't necessarily have experience of doing that, often people build a business around the specialism that they have, or the service and the product that they've developed. So when there's a big challenge to how that service or product is delivered, the customer base, obviously, if you don't have access to an audience or a space that you need to deliver that, so you're having to step back and go, right, how do I turn this on its head? How do I solve the short term, but also think about what's coming around over the next 6, 12, 18 months? How do we remain distinctive? How do we communicate the changes to our customer base, who themselves might not be ready to re-engage? What advice do you give, or what techniques or tips have you found work with people when they're kind of faced with having to do that?
That's a good question. So I think it's definitely looking at the ways in which the services and products that the organisations are working with can be flexible, and sort of looking at how there is potential to change, not completely change, but swerve products or services just slightly so that they can continue during this time. But in terms of that narrative and that discussion with the, reaching the audiences and the audience change, I think sort of it's kind of rethinking narrative. I think that's what we've been doing. We've been looking at the story of businesses and the kind of how businesses or organizations see themselves and their internal organization narrative, and then how they perceive that out to the public world and to their audiences in their realm. So I think a lot of what we've been doing is trying to make their services or products more flexible, so that they can survive and continue, and then maybe return again back to that sort of normal practice. But then also within that, considering the narrative that they're sharing and building that public conversation so that their audiences know what are happening, and or that they can sort of reach out and engage new audiences through the change in the direction of their services and products. So I think it's been a bit flexibility, and then sharing stories and narratives, and being really open about what's happening to the business, not being ashamed to say we've struggled, we've had to change, this is what we're doing now, and this is where we are, and this is who we are now, and it may be very different to what you knew before. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. And I think I've been hearing that a lot, and across sector as well. I was talking to somebody yesterday from the restaurant trade, and speaking to people working in the construction sector, and they've all had to think about that, maybe being a bit more transparent than they normally would, maybe not that just kind of saying, well, it's business as usual, and keeping that sort of professional distance. Actually, that's that distance is not always appropriate at the moment. And some of the businesses that are really succeeding in that communications is, as you say, is being a bit more open, showing a little bit of vulnerability, not desperation, saying you better shop with us in the next 3 months, otherwise we are going under. And of course that's the reality for some, but just say, look, this times are tough. We're having to rethink the way that we work with you, but we've got some plans, we've got some ideas, and we'd love to hear from you what you need. And I think, particularly in some sectors where, sometimes there is a little bit of distance, or perceived, sometimes a bit of haughtiness, this, because so again, talking the restaurant trade, quite high-end restaurants and so on, they usually have to come across as almost sort of untouchable. You're going there for the kind of elitist experience that you're getting, but actually when they're opening up the bonnet behind that and saying, actually, this is really hard.
Completely. And I think I've seen that as well in some organizations that I've seen sort of trying to translate that and change that story or that narrative. It is becoming opening up and becoming a little bit more personalized, like, with social media and sort of our public voice in businesses. Quite often we talk as a brand, like, well, our organization's doing this, we're doing that, etc. And we have a sort of non-personalized face to our social media, our marketing and our communication. And actually what I'm seeing a lot more is, directors of businesses, heads of organizations actually coming into the social media realm, actually talking about what that business or organization is having to do to change. Having that personalized voice. And I really thought, I noticed that recently on an organization that were tweeting, and the way that they were tweeting as first person, rather than third, and it was much more personal. It was much more of a conversation of, these are the real people behind this logo, this brand that these are the real things that we're doing right now. And also sort of talking about not just, we are doing as in our normal products and services, but also, actually we are trying to survive, we are trying to continue, and in the meantime, we're doing this little bit extra, or we've changed, or we're going this way so we can further support our community. If we can't give you this event or festival right now, instead what we're going to give you is working with our partners to share all the services and activities that they've got going on, so about it. So it's a bit more personal, a bit more heartfelt communication, I think.
100%. I got an email yesterday from a tea company, people who specialize in blending teas, and that's quite expensive boutique tea, but it's very nice. And their email was really interesting, because it just said, we don't have a Black Friday deal, we can't afford to, and we're not going to promise you discounts to the end of the earth and really cut back on our margins, because we're not in a position to do that. But instead, what we are going to use our platform to do is to tell you about all these wonderful local businesses that are within our sort of community. Some of them absolutely nothing to do with tea whatsoever, but don't have the size of the mailing list that we have. So rather than use this as a marketing push for ourselves, we're actually going to use it as a platform to showcase some of the other stuff that you may or may not like. But we're taking a punt with that, but hopefully you'll see why we're doing this. And that was really interesting, I thought, just to kind of think about how you use your reach as well in different ways.
And I think I've seen definitely in terms of, especially in creative industries and events industries, businesses and organizations and sort of business sector or events or art sector associations, that sort of different ones or different areas that don't usually interact or don't usually intermingle, all of a sudden, really coming together, because actually at the end of the day, the type of campaigning that they're doing in order to try and reach the government to find those sector support is very similar to their sort of brother sister sectors.
Yes.
And so obviously with the pandemic, we're seeing communities coming together and being incredible in terms of sort of volunteering and helping out your neighbour who's sheltering, etc. And I'm really starting to see that in the business sector as well, in terms of associations and organisations really coming together for the first time, I think, actually, in a lot of cases, to say, actually, we do a very similar thing and we've got a similar need that we need to go and ask the government or local council for support. So let's do this together. And that's been incredible for me to see, and able, you know, I think, again, like once those businesses are talking, once those different sort of sector associations are sort of crossing over their conversation, new networks are being built and new sort of potential projects, and you know, the sector's strengthening, and that's a really fantastic outcome of where we are in this awful way that, you know, that it's happened, but potentially, hopefully, again, coming out of the pandemic and with the vaccine, I really hope those businesses and those associations continue to work together, because it makes us all our organisations stronger, and provides more resource and support for smaller businesses in the sector as well.
Yeah, and that approach, you know, there'll be some cynics and certainly even, you know, business support services or consultants 5-10 years ago would have said, I mean, that's all lovely, but that's commercial suicide. You know, you're spending far too much time on this kind of wishy-washy, you know, actually you need to knuckle down, sort out your commercial offer, blah blah blah. I think that's an outdated approach now, and actually what we see is just how much customer bases really value seeing that cooperation, that openness, that sense of, you know, kind of purpose bigger than just survival or making a quick buck, and pooling definitely resources, and that you know, it's kind of win-win, because people start to work together and foster a stronger sector, as you say. But that's also, it's good marketing. It's good. It's a good way to show what you're made of. And so businesses are really benefiting from that. Last question. Almost counterintuitively, we've seen in the data staggering stats around how many new businesses have been set up, how many more people have registered self-employed or as sole traders in the last 6 months. I guess beneath that, you know, there'll be people who've lost their work or feel that their jobs are now not very secure, and have thought, well, that business idea I've had in the back of my head for many years, well, I've got nothing to lose now. I'm gonna give it a go. You know, do you have any thoughts or tips or suggestions for people who are in that situation where they're starting a new business in a pandemic? You know, there's going to be many things that are going to be difficult, but are there opportunities? Are there things that people, you know, that actually could be quite exciting as a driver at the moment, do you think?
Yeah, I do, and that really makes me think of a story. I guess I've heard of two air hostesses that worked from Gatwick. I don't know which airline they work for, but obviously they lost their jobs, unfortunately. They're based in Hove in Brighton, and they've put together a sort of hospitality food company where they now deliver gourmet sort of tapas boxes, you know, and gourmet picnics to people's homes, or they're doing whole Christmas hampers. So where businesses would usually take you out for Christmas and they can't, you have a Zoom Christmas call, but they deliver your food hamper and your drinks to your home so everyone can have their Christmas lunch together. And I just think that's an amazing response to a situation where, you know, they had no jobs. What can we do? What are people needing right now? Loads of people are ordering in. Loads of people want a nice special experience they can't get at home, you know, they can't get at the restaurant or wherever else. And they're really, I hope their business is doing well. I just thought that was such a really quick response and change to the pandemic. But in answer to your question, I think, yes, it's going to be very tough right now because there's a tough economic climate for small new businesses. But I think on the flip side of that, there is a lot more support and resource currently available because of that. I know that obviously through the government schemes, there's potential of grants and loans and funds for businesses to get them to continue operating during the pandemic and the lockdown. But I've also noticed a lot of businesses and organisations that do training and sort of educational resources for business are now starting to do a few more like free YouTube videos on certain subjects. I've seen free training courses and sort of all sorts of marketing and viral events management and things like that. So I think now is the time to make the most of the offers that are available that maybe will disappear again when the sort of economy returns, and And when those businesses start going, okay, we need to charge for this again. So yeah, I think there are some more resources. There are more resources available to help businesses right now. And yeah, if you can make the most of those whilst you're setting yourself up, then you're going to be in a stronger position going forward, aren't you? So yeah,
absolutely, yeah, you're right. I mean, there's a ton of stuff out there. I think the challenge is not accessing it or finding it. It's navigating the breadth of it. You know, there's so much.
Yeah.
So that's why. And you'll agree with me, I know, that talking to organisations like What's Possible, where we can help people sort of navigate that noise,
exactly.
or to help curate some of that support.
To pick and choose, yeah, definitely. And you need to do that as well, because especially if you're setting up a new business, you don't have lots of time, capacity and resource to do everything. So it's definitely focusing in on what it is that you need specifically for your business to kind of help you drive and develop forward, rather than scattergun approach of, well, I can do this, this and this, but actually where is that going to get you? Definitely.
Thank you, Jo.
That's all right.
Useful.